December 17, 1944. 0530 hours. Honsfeld, Belgium. The Tiger tank's engine coughed once, sputtered twice, then stopped. Inside the steel shell, SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Peiper slammed his fist against the hatch. The sound echoed through the frozen dark like a hammer striking iron. His driver, Unterscharführer Werner Föber, tried again to start the Maybach HL 230 engine. Nothing. The fuel gauge pointed to empty. Peiper climbed out. Snow cracked beneath his boots. Around him, the most powerful armored column Germany had left stood silent. 70 tanks, 149 half-tracks, nearly 5,000 men of the Waffen-SS, the spearhead of Operation Watch on the Rhine, now paralyzed, not by battle, but by fuel. Through the morning mist, Peiper saw a village ahead, Honsfeld. Moments earlier, it had been an American supply point of the U.S. 99th Infantry Division. The Americans had withdrawn so fast that fires still burned in oil drums. Coffee still steamed in tin cups. And there, rows upon rows of olive-drab jerry cans, stacked 3 meters high, stretching down the frozen road. Peiper's adjutant, Hans Gruber, opened one. He smelled it. High-octane gasoline, Herr Obersturmbannführer. Men began to run. Funnels, hoses, shouted orders, engines coughed back to life. German tanks drank American fuel. Peiper counted silently. 50,000 gallons. Enough to drive his entire formation to the Meuse River. Enough, perhaps, to change the war, but the thought turned to ice. If the Americans could abandon so much, then Germany was already defeated. 6 months earlier, Albert Speer, Minister of Armaments, had warned Hitler. Allied bombing had crushed Germany's synthetic fuel production. From 175,000 tons in April to barely 5,000 tons by September. At the same time, the United States refined 1.8 billion barrels of crude oil. Germany, with all its synthetic plants and captured Romanian fields, produced 33 million. Less than 2% of America's output. Still, Hitler demanded an offensive. Split the Allies. Take Antwerp. Forced negotiation. The plan was called Wacht am Rhein. Its math was impossible. The offensive required 4.5 million gallons of fuel. Hitler allocated 5. Only half ever reached the front. Peiper's allocation, 31,000 gallons. Enough for 50 miles of combat. The Meuse was 65 miles away. His orders were clear. You will have enough fuel if you capture it from the enemy. December 16th, 0700 hours. The column began to move. Maps marked highways. The real roads were narrow farm tracks, frozen and broken. Engines strained, treads slipped. Peiper ordered engines shut down during halts longer than 5 minutes. Every liter mattered. At Lanzerath, 18 American reconnaissance soldiers held a crossroads. 18 men. They delayed Peiper's entire panzer column for 10 hours. By the time he broke through, a third of his fuel was gone. Burned in idling engines, waiting for the road to clear. At dawn, December 17th, Peiper entered Honsfeld. His tanks were almost dry. Then came the miracle. The depot. The jerry cans. 50,000 gallons of salvation. Sergeant Wilhelm Hoffmann searched the depot office. He found shipping manifests. Texas to New York. Across the Atlantic to Liverpool. Across the Channel to Normandy. 400 miles by truck to Honsfeld. 6,000 miles in 6 weeks. When he showed the papers to Peiper, the commander read them twice, then crushed them in his gloved hand. They cross oceans faster than we cross provinces, he said quietly. Another soldier found a copy of the Stars and Stripes, dated December 15th. The headline, "New pipeline delivers 300,000 gallons per day." One pipeline delivering more than his division would use in the entire offensive. Peiper said nothing, Officers nearby saw the color drain from his face. Since 1941, Germany had lived on captured fuel and synthetic substitutes. The Fischer-Tropsch process turned coal into gasoline, expensive and slow. Every ton of fuel required 4 tons of coal. Each bombing raid erased months of effort. By late 1944, the Luftwaffe was grounded. Training flights cut by 80%. Civilians burned wood for heat. The Wehrmacht fought a mechanized war with horses. Across the Channel, the Red Ball Express rolled 24 hours a day. 6,000 trucks, 23,000 drivers, 12,500 tons of supplies delivered daily. 3,000 tons of fuel alone. Each truck burned 40 gallons per day, more than an entire German company received in a week. That morning, Honsfeld was alive with engines. Tiger crews siphoned high-octane aviation fuel into 74-octane engines. Some carburetors misfired. The fuel was too pure. Within hours, 50,000 gallons vanished into tanks and drums. Peiper gathered his officers. "We continue to Stavelot," he said, then added quietly, "If they can abandon this, we cannot win." Outside, the engines roared. For the moment, the offensive lived again, but its life was borrowed. Its victory, an illusion of fuel. The math would soon close the equation, and Germany's final offensive would end the way it had begun, with an empty tank. December 17th, 1944, 1600 hours. Stavelot, Belgium. Snow fell in slow white flakes through the smoke. Peiper's tanks moved west, their tracks biting into frozen earth. Ahead lay the Stavelot fuel depot, 2 million gallons of American gasoline. It was the only hope left for the drive to the Meuse. Inside his command tank, Joachim Peiper studied his map. 45 miles to the river. 70,000 gallons needed. He had barely half. He closed the map. "If we fail to reach it by nightfall," he told Gruber. The war ends here. While Peiper advanced through Belgium, another war was being won in refineries and ports. In Texas alone, 25,000 oil wells pumped 4 million barrels of crude each day. Steel pipelines carried it to giant refineries, then to ships crossing the Atlantic. The Allies called it Operation Pluto, pipeline under the ocean. By December, those pipes moved 1 million gallons of gasoline every day beneath the English Channel. From England to France, from Cherbourg to Paris, from Paris to the front. Fuel flowed like blood through an artery that never stopped. Germany had no such lifeline. Its synthetic plants at Leuna, Blechhammer, and Pohlitz lay in ruins from Allied bombing. Output had fallen below 10%. The Reich's reserves for the entire army were enough for 8 weeks at most. Allied forces in Europe used 7.5 million gallons a day and still built reserves. The war had become a contest between scarcity and abundance. At First Army Headquarters, Colonel James Snyder wrote his daily report. Fuel received, 1,847,000 gallons. Fuel issued, 1,623,000. Reserves increased again. Those numbers were routine, and they were lethal to Germany. The lifeline that made it possible was the Red Ball Express. 6,000 trucks, 23,000 drivers, 12,500 tons of supplies moved every day. They burned 100,000 gallons daily just to deliver fuel to the front. For America, that was acceptable. For Germany, it was unthinkable. The Red Ball Express alone consumed more gasoline in a week than an entire German army group received in a month. In Berlin, Albert Speer ran his calculations. Even if the Ardennes offensive succeeded, there would be no fuel to exploit the victory. He called it feeding our last strength into an empty furnace. Hitler refused to listen. "The enemy exaggerates," he said. "Victory will supply us, but victory cannot refine gasoline. Major Friedrich Simon of 6th SS Panzer Army wrote, "To reach Antwerp, we needed 4.5 million gallons. Half was delivered. The rest was hope." Orders to Peiper were clear. Fuel is priority 1. Capture enemy supplies. Tactical objectives are secondary. It was a strategy built on gambling. As Peiper's column rolled on, American fuel convoys passed in the opposite direction. Each pipeline section could pump 200,000 gallons a day. Storage farms near Paris held 12 million. At the front, some units dumped old gasoline to make room for fresh deliveries. Captain James Rose of the 743rd Tank Battalion wrote, "Our tanks are full, storage is full. We get another convoy tomorrow." One army drowned in fuel. The other was thirsting to death. A Tiger tank burned 2.5 gallons per mile. A Panther, 1.5. Half-tracks, almost a gallon per mile. Every hour of movement drank 4,000 gallons. The 50,000 gallons captured at Honsfeld would keep Peiper moving for half a day, nothing more. America's army used 1.2 million gallons each day and received 1.4. They fought while accumulating reserves. The difference was not strategy, it was scale. At the Stavelot depot, Captain John Brewster of the 291st Engineers had orders. Deny fuel to the enemy at all costs. His men opened drums, poured gasoline through the snow, and waited. When German tanks appeared on the ridge, Brewster gave the command. A white phosphorus grenade fell into the trail of fuel. The explosion was instant. A wall of fire rose 100 feet high. 2 million gallons of gasoline turned into a mountain of flame. Peiper stopped his tank and watched. "They can afford to burn what we die to find," he said. Across the Ardennes, the same scene repeated. Spa, Trois Ponts, Tapon. 8 million gallons destroyed in 1 week. America was destroying more fuel than Germany possessed. For the men of the Waffen-SS, each explosion was a message. They were not fighting soldiers. They were fighting an economy without limit. By December 20th, Peiper had 8,000 gallons left, enough for 20 kilometers. The Meuse was 30 away. He called his officers together. "Gentlemen," he said, "we are fighting an enemy who burns more fuel to deny it to us than we received for this entire operation." They understood. The war was already lost. The statistics are merciless. Operation Wacht am Rhein. Total allocation 5 million gallons. Fuel destroyed by U.S. engineers 8 million. Average daily American consumption 7.5 million. Fuel captured by Peiper 50,000. 0.6% of 1 American day. No tactic could bridge that gap. Defeat was an equation. Colonel Friedrich von Dender, captured on December 23rd, told his interrogators, "Your soldiers throw away chocolate. We have not seen chocolate in 2 years. You burn millions of gallons. We count liters. How can we fight such abundance?" Major Otto Dingler calculated. "In 4 days, we consumed 67,000 gallons, captured 55. We were operating at a deficit from the start." The truth was clear to every man in the snow. They were not fighting a war any longer. They were living inside a mathematical certainty. By December 21st, the survivors were surrounded at La Glaise. American divisions around them held 340,000 gallons of fuel for that day alone. Peiper had less than 1,000. The Battle of the Bulge was still raging on maps, but in reality, it was over. Ended not by gunfire, but by empty tanks. The fire at Stavelot had shown the truth. Germany had run out of motion. December 18th, 1944. 0700 hours. Stavelot, Belgium. The flames were still rising. Columns of black smoke twisted into the pale sky. The American fuel depot was gone. 2 million gallons of gasoline burned into the winter air. Peiper's men stood on the ridge, silent. The snow around them had melted into oily mud. The heat was unbearable. Steel drums exploded like artillery. The smell of fuel mixed with smoke and death. Peiper lowered his binoculars. "They can afford to burn their victory," he said. "We burn our future trying to reach it." By mid-morning, the advance resumed. Each kilometer forward drained their tanks. Each hour cost them survival. Mechanics siphoned the last drops from broken half-tracks. Trucks without fuel were set on fire. The road to Trois Ponts became a line of blackened machines. Reports came in. Bridges blown, roads mined, convoys ambushed from the air. The German advance had slowed to walking speed. The Blitzkrieg was dead. That afternoon, near Bonnier Crossroads, American prisoners from the 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion were lined up in a snowy field. Confusion, shouting, a spark of panic. Then gunfire. 84 unarmed Americans were killed. The Malmedy Massacre. Later, Peiper claimed he never gave the order. He said his troops had no fuel to transport prisoners, no means to hold them. Whatever the reason, the blood in that snow would follow his name to the end of his life. Word spread quickly through the American lines. Remember Malmedy? No quarter given. Mercy frozen out of the Winter War. At the same time, American engineers kept burning their own depots. At Spa, at Trois Ponts, at Tapon. Another 6 million gallons gone. Each explosion lit the sky like a sunrise. The snow glowed orange for miles. Lieutenant Heinz Gulls wrote in his diary, "They burn more fuel in a day than we move in a month." The horizon itself is on fire. For the Germans, the fires were more than destruction. They were revelation. All their faith in discipline and efficiency died in those flames. They saw the true measure of power, not skill, not courage, but the ability to waste what others would die for. Captured documents told the same story. The Allies had pipelines that carried 800,000 gallons a day. Another network moved 650,000. The Red Ball Express delivered 3,000 tons of fuel every 24 hours. When Field Marshal Walter Model read the reports, he said only, "We are not fighting an army. We are fighting an industry." Gruber, Peiper's adjutant, put it more simply. For every leader we capture, they have 10,000. Our mathematics ends in zero. Above them, the Luftwaffe no longer flew. Its fuel was gone. Pilot training cut from 250 hours to 60. Airfields stood silent. Aircraft hidden in barns, engines drained and cold. Across the channel, American bombers took off by the thousand. Each B-17 burned 1,200 gallons per hour. Each P-51 burned 120. The numbers were unreal, but they were real enough to erase cities. In the snow below, the Wehrmacht fought with horses again. Carts creaked beside tanks, cavalry next to panthers, men and animals pulling the war forward together. Modern war had turned medieval. Steel without fuel was just metal. For years, German propaganda had praised precision and order. Yet by 1944, it was America that embodied those things. Standardized engines, interchangeable parts, single fuel grade for every vehicle. German units burned whatever they could find. Diesel, synthetic blend, captured stocks. The result was chaos. Even the fuel they stole could destroy their engines. Efficiency had crossed the ocean. On December 19th, American transport planes dropped 160,000 gallons of fuel to Bastogne. They were delivering from the sky more than Peiper's entire force had left on the ground. General Hodge's order went out across the front. Destroy all gasoline threatened by capture, enemy critically short of fuel. For the Americans, it was simple logistics. For the Germans, it was despair. By December 20th, Peiper reached La Glaise, the last 20 miles from the Meuse, but his tanks were empty again. He gathered what fuel remained into a few Tigers guarding the village. The rest stood dead, half buried in snow. The engines cold, the crews colder. That night, Peiper told his officers, "We are surrounded not by soldiers, but by mathematics." Outside, artillery began to fall. Each shell was an equation of production: steel, powder, propellant, all flowing from an industrial machine that never stopped. Letters later found on German soldiers spoke of disbelief. "Americans wash clothes in gasoline," one read. "They feed chocolate to dogs. They fire artillery for Christmas. We cannot fight infinity." That word appeared again and again. Infinity. The realization moved through the ranks faster than any order. The war was lost. By December 21st, Peiper's men were surrounded at La Glaise. His last radio message was short. Fuel convoy destroyed. No resupply possible. They waited for night, then began to burn their own machines. Tigers, Panthers, half-tracks, all destroyed. Engines drained and set alight. At 2 in the morning, Peiper led 770 survivors on foot through the snow. Behind them, 39 tanks and 200 vehicles burned. Private Ernst Kara wrote, "We left them behind like skeletons. Each one had died of thirst. On Christmas Day, American troops entered La Glaise. They found silence, smoke, and one Tiger tank still standing in the town square. Fuel gauge on 0. Major Robert Harrison's report noted, "To recover these vehicles, we require 8,000 gallons. Available locally. Time, 4 hours. For Germany, that number was impossible. For America, it was routine." General Hasso von Manteuffel later said, "When I learned the Americans had destroyed 8 million gallons rather than let us capture it, I knew the offensive had failed before it began." Another officer wrote simply, "We saw God in the fire, and he was American industry." The Ardennes offensive ended not with battle, but with exhaustion. No fuel, no motion, no future. The myth of the invincible Panzer had burned away. All that remained were empty engines in the snow. December 24th, 1944. 0200 hours. La Glaise, Belgium. The night was silent, except for the crackle of fire. Peiper's men moved through the forest, one by one, in the dark. Behind them, the tanks burned. The last fuel poured onto steel, the last spark of the German offensive consumed in flame. Out of 5,000 men, only 770 still followed. They carried rifles, frostbite, and silence. They were walking away from the last German attack in the west. At dawn, the snow fell again. They reached German lines near Wann. Exhausted men stumbled into their own territory, faces hollow, boots torn, eyes empty. There was no cheering. They had learned the truth of modern war. Germany had not been defeated in battle. It had been drained to death. Historians later calculated the arithmetic of that defeat. Kampfgruppe Peiper began with 119 tanks, 149 half-tracks, 4,800 men. By Christmas Eve, 39 tanks remained. Immobile, without fuel. 177 other vehicles destroyed or abandoned. 5,000 men reduced to hundreds. The numbers told the story. The campaign had not failed through cowardice. It had failed through subtraction. At the same moment, the U.S. First Army reported reserves at 4.1 million gallons, higher than when the battle began. Their supply curve pointed upward. Germany's line pointed down to 0. Victory and defeat were no longer decided by generals. They were decided by production charts. After the war, the comparison became undeniable. In 1944, the United States refined 1.8 billion barrels of crude oil. Germany, including synthetic and captured Romanian fields, produced 33 million, a ratio of 55-1. The U.S. built 88,000 tanks. Germany, 46,000. America produced 324,000 aircraft. Germany, 119,000. War had become an equation. Courage multiplied by 0 equals defeat. In the ruins of the Reich, soldiers wrote home with bitter clarity. Americans drive tanks while we march, one said. They have oceans of gasoline, we have drops. Engines stand idle, wrote another. We burn furniture for heat. Once we thought ourselves modern, now we move with horses. By 1945, half the German army's transport ran on hooves. A mechanized empire had turned into a marching army. In February, Allied bombers erased the last hydrogenation plants at Leuna and Pölitz. Synthetic fuel production ended. The Luftwaffe stopped flying. Pilot training collapsed. Submarines lay rusting in port, too empty to dive. In German cities, cars disappeared. Civilians rode bicycles or walked. Gasoline theft became a hanging crime. The sound of engines had defined the Third Reich. Now, there was only silence. Across the ocean, the contrast was staggering. In Texas, oil wells pumped day and night. The East Texas field alone produced more than all of occupied Europe. American refineries were so efficient, they experimented with new byproducts just to use excess crude. By the spring of 1945, Allied armies in Europe held 500 million gallons in reserve. Each American division carried 10 days of fuel forward. Each convoy stretched from Normandy to the Rhine. They did not measure fuel in gallons anymore. They measured it in rivers. Captured German officers spoke openly about the shock of it. One colonel told his interrogators, "Your soldiers throw away rations we would die for. You burn fuel to stay warm while we freeze." Propaganda had taught them that the Allies were decadent and weak. But at Stavelot and Honsfeld, they saw another truth. Power was not efficiency. Power was abundance. In La Glaise, the last Tiger tank still stands. Its armor flawless, its gun perfect, its engine empty. Tourists ask why it was left behind. The answer is simple: no fuel. It is a monument not to defeat, but to the limits of technology. The tank represents the moment when brilliance met arithmetic and lost. Historians like Richard Overy and Trevor Dupuy later measured the scale of industrial warfare. By 1944, the Allied to-axis ratio of production was 5-to-1 in every major category. In petroleum, 50-to-1. Dupuy calculated that each American soldier was supplied with 67 pounds of material daily. Each German soldier, 3. The Battle of the Bulge proved a new rule. In modern war, logistics is destiny. Factories and refineries decide what courage can achieve. By March 1945, German panzer divisions were reduced to skeletons of metal. Some surrendered with tanks in perfect condition, without a single drop of fuel to start them. General Major Fritz Bahlen wrote, "We had 42 tanks and experienced crews. Ammunition was full. Fuel, 300 liters. We destroyed them ourselves and walked to captivity." At the same time, Patton's Third Army advanced 60 miles in 3 days. It used 350,000 gallons just to redeploy. For the Germans, that was unthinkable. The difference between armies was the difference between movement and stillness. In April, Peiper was captured. He was 30 years old, tired, silent, and bitter. Later, in an interview, he said, "Finding that depot was the worst thing. We learned the enemy had oceans while we had drops. We discovered impossibility." He was released from prison in 1956. In 1976, he was murdered in France. His house burned. Another fire to mark his story's end. The Battle of the Bulge cost Germany 100,000 men, 800 tanks, 1,000 aircraft. It delayed defeat by 6 weeks and confirmed it forever. For every gallon Peiper captured, America used 200. For every tank Germany fielded, America built 10. It was not a battle of soldiers anymore. It was a battle of factories. By May 1945, the roads of Germany were filled with stillness. Engines silent, tanks abandoned, soldiers walking home. For 6 years, the Reich had worshipped motion. It had lived by the roar of engines. It died in silence. 80 years later, the Ardennes is quiet. Beneath the forests lie the remains of that winter. Steel fragments, fuel drums, rusted jerry cans. The museum at La Glaise holds Peiper's Tiger tank, its fuel gauge frozen on zero. Visitors ask why such a powerful weapon stopped there. The guide always gives the same answer. No fuel. That gauge tells the story of modern war. Not strategy, not ideology. Arithmetic. In 1944, Germany fought for every leader. America burned millions to deny them capture. One side measured by cans, the other by oceans. And so the final truth remains. Wars are not won by courage alone. They are won by supply, by motion, by the power to waste what the enemy needs to live. That winter, in the Ardennes, Germany discovered that courage without fuel is just stillness. The engines of empire had stopped. The world kept moving.